and we'll just kind of go from there. Um, Anything you want to say before we start, Dad?
No, um, nope, I don't have anything at this time. Still kind of nervous. I'm not used to whatever they call this streaming, podcasting, or whatever they call it.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Cool. So, a couple accomplishments that my dad has. So, my dad graduated with his master's in social work in 1999, and so he's had what over 25 years of experience with social work. He started a successful foster care business in 2000, and then you guys sold it in 2008, right, Dad?
Mhm.
To the Mentor Network. They're out of Boston, which is one of the biggest foster care companies in the U.S. And then now, what my dad does is they run a DSPD company or services, and then he teaches addiction recovery classes. So I wanted my dad to explain a little bit about what he does with addiction recovery, kind of how that works, and then we'll go into a little bit of those questions. So, Dad, with addiction recovery, what does that entail? What specifically do you do there?
Um, yeah, so uh I teach groups and I do counseling, but mostly groups. So it's individuals who struggle with addictions, but specifically sexual addictions, pornography, and so on. And so they're trying to overcome that. And what I do is I run groups that teach evidence-based practices of how to overcome addictions using science that's been proven or interventions that have been proven to work. But also at the same time, I combine also Christian based principles that I combine that to overcome addictions. And it could be addictions with pornography, sexual addictions, or really anything that you may be addicted to. Um, I use these different techniques or skills of how to overcome it using evidence-based practices, but also using Christian principles. But I run those groups and counseling um, on Wednesdays. Thursdays, I run groups, and then on Saturdays, I run a Zoom group. But it's just individuals, men and also young men, who are trying to overcome sexual addictions. They they believe it goes against their values, and so they are seeking some help with it. So that's what I do.
Yeah. And what got you into to start like doing that kind of therapy? Therapy, but
Yeah,
also like the psychoeducation too.
yeah. So it first started when I first graduated from school. I thought that my track of working in the mental health field was to work with Pacific Islanders with high risk, kids who were in gangs and substance abuse and all that. That was first where I started, and I still do that. But what happened was, let's see, about 10, 11 years ago, I was serving as an LDS bishop or an ecclesiastical leader, and some of the youth were struggling with pornography. And then, and so I started to see that quite with a lot of individuals that I was visiting with as a church leader. And so what I did was I started to learn some things from this program out here in Utah, and I started to learn some principles and techniques and so on. And then I actually joined them, and that's how it all first started. But it first started because I needed it for the the volunteer work that I did as a church leader. I needed to help. And then when I started learning these principles, I started doing that part time. And actually, I started doing that part time, Ammon, uh, just to get some extra money to pay for your your church service mission.
Mm.
You and Kamalei, you guys were both on your missions, and I was just doing that part time, and really it was just to get some extra money to pay for your missions. And now I'm doing it, and it's been what, 10 years later,
Yeah.
8 to 10 years later. But it first started was just to get some extra money to just to pay for missions. So that's how it all kind of started.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I mean, if you guys have been um, in my channel a while, you guys know that I served a service mission for my church in Africa. And my dad actually served as well a service mission for 2 years in New Zealand. Where in New Zealand did you serve again, Dad?
I was in the Auckland mission,
And what did that
New
cover?
Zealand.
What did that cover? What areas did that cover?
Um, are there people from New Zealand here?
Yeah, there's a couple people
Oh yeah.
in here
Yeah,
from New Zealand.
so the city of Auckland, there's Mangere, Otara, um, let me see, Otahuhu, Papatoetoe. It's really the city of Auckland.
Mm.
That's where just all these little smaller towns in Auckland City. So I don't know if everybody will know those different cities, but yeah, um, it's mostly I served as a Tongan speaking missionary in that area, but it was mostly in Auckland because most of there's a lot of Tongan, Samoans, and so on in the city of Auckland.
Yeah, yeah. See, some like
It's
Blaze and
just yeah, it's just like if you're in Salt Lake City, and then you have towns like Taylorsville or West Valley, but you're still kind of in Salt Lake.
right,
You're in Salt Lake County.
right. Cool. So there's a lot of questions that people submitted. So I mean, we'll try to get through majority of them, um, and uh, and then kind of go from there. But so the first one I sent you the first one. That it says, let's see. Oh yeah, this one here. So the first question we'll go of is, what is your message? Oh wait, what is your message to those in the Polynesian community that might be scared or ashamed about signing up for mental health services or addiction recovery?
Yeah, I think number one, I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of a natural thing to not talk about, uh, let's say mental health, or if you're struggling. I think every human being, we in most cases try to kind of figure things out on our own. But I remember there's a little saying. I don't know if any of you have heard about a social worker. She's a PhD. Her name is Brene Brown. She's from the University of Texas, and an amazing professor. She studies shame and empathy. But anyways, there's a little saying where they make a comparison between shame and guilt. So for an example, if you make a mistake, guilt is actually good. Meaning, guilt means that if you made a mistake, you went against your values. Guilt is something that is good because you know you made a mistake and you want to change. Where shame is when you think you are a mistake. So you made a mistake is guilt. Shame is where you think you're a mistake, and shame is really something that sometimes happen to a lot of us, and then we don't go and get help at all. So I would say um, shame. I mean, going and getting help is really a sign of strength. So I would say talk to people. Um, let me give you an example. In the countries of the Asian countries, they use shame a lot to try to motivate people. I'll give you an example. In some of these Polynesian stores, years ago, I remember I would go to a Polynesian store and we would buy products from the grocery or whatever, from a, sorry, not a Polynesian store, a Chinese store. in West Valley, and I remember we would go buy stuff there, and by the cashier, by where you buy your food, uh, they would have this little wall where they would have checks of individuals that bound their checks would bounce, where they would write a check. Right now, we usually don't write checks, but back in the 90s, we would write checks and buy things. But I remember years ago, these Asian people, if your check bounced when you bought groceries from them, they would actually post that check with your name
Dang.
on the wall right by the cashier so people could see it. And I looked at it, and I never wrote a check. Usually in there, it was just cash or whatever. But I remember they would shame people. That was their way of motivating people.
Hmm.
A lot of the Asian cultures, I don't know if that, but that was just how it worked a lot, is that they would shame the people, and that was their way of motivating to change. But shame, once again, it's when you internalize that you are a mistake, but you're not a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay, when you got to make sure you know the difference between if you make a mistake, you feel guilt, then you change it. Where shame is when you think you are a mistake and you do nothing.
Yeah.
You think you're not worth anything. So I would say, going back to that question, um, once again, I'm going to use Christian principles. Uh, the Sorry guys, I'm going to use Christian principles. If you're trying to change, the adversary tries to get us to not talk to anybody. Stay in the shame cycle. Don't go and get any help. Just try to deal with it yourself. Sometimes you can deal with it yourself, but when it gets to a point where you need help, talk to someone. Shame is really a tool that the adversary uses for you to not do anything and just think that you're a mistake. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah. V said I remember seeing those, and they were usually all Pauly. He said with the checks.
Yeah, I would look at those checks and I would see some people that were relatives. Just, you see people that you know.
Okay, the next question. I think you kind of answered this too, Dad. But someone said, at what point do you need to seek therapy? I feel like since having kids, my mental health has plummeted, and I don't know how to feel like myself again.
Yeah. Um, I would say, once again, with mental health, uh, when you start to see that your functioning level is just really, really bad. Like, for example, if you can't go to work, if your functioning with your family members is affected, I mean, you can't even get up, all these different things that if it's affecting work, family, different, a lot of things that you used to love to do, I would then go see a counselor, but or seek therapy just for some help. But I would, if you're feeling that way, I would maybe just see a doctor first. They may even refer you to a counselor, but you really just have to kind of go back to some basics of maybe exercise, eating healthier, read some good books. I don't believe as a counselor that you need to see a counselor immediately. You can do a lot of things just by yourself, with friends, making good connections. But when you start seeing things where you can't function normally, like you don't even want to go to work, you don't even want to get out of bed, maybe your appetite is either increasing or decreasing, those things,
Hmm.
then I would say see someone. But I would say try to do a lot of things. There's so much information and resources just on the internet regarding how to help yourself with, let's say, possible depression, um, that you can just kind of do yourself. I say this as a therapist: don't go spend $80 to $100 on a therapist. You can probably do a lot of things first. Just when it becomes severe and you can't handle it anymore, then maybe get some help.
Right. Right. Um. Okay. Thanks, Dad. So this one is a little bit. It's a different kind of question. It's more towards like the Polynesian aspect. But someone said, as a second generation immigrant, I feel like a lot of my culture especially the language, is lost living here in the States. And as a proud Tongan, this can be discouraging at times. What can I do to counter this self identity crisis I'm having?
Yeah, that's a good question because I, my parents, when they came and we were here as first generation, so to speak. I think that's what you might call it, coming from Tonga. I came from Tonga when I was one and lived here. And I really couldn't speak Tongan until I went on my on a LDS mission.
Yeah.
I was 18, 19 years old, and it wasn't until then I could speak. I learned Tongan. But prior to that, I mean, yeah, there were self-identity issues. But I would say, I don't know, guys. I don't know if you really have to be able to speak the language to have this identity issues. I think it's good to understand some of your culture and know some of the good, solid things that will help you be a good contributing citizen. But identity is just where you identify that I am a Tongan or but I think it's good to really kind of have some knowledge of it, take the good things, know the bad things, and then you kind of create your own identity mixed. There's a Tongan proverb. It's kind of a funny Tongan proverb. In Tongan, it's called ala isia, ala I kolonga. And what that means, I don't know what this is just kind of a weird proverb, Tongan proverb. But ala isia, ala kolonga is they talk about when in Tonga they would trap birds. They would catch birds and be able to cook at the same time. So catch a bird, cook at the same time. And so what they were saying is being able to multitask. And I remember one of my colleagues that I went to school with in graduate school. His name is David Kaili. He's the one that kind of shared this Tongan proverb. If you are a person that is in America, you need to have what they call ala isia ala I kolonga. And it's when you can multitask between the American way and Tongan way or Samoan way, whatever, your different cultures. If you can do that, you become I think you can become more talented because you have different cultures to pull from. You multitask. So they use that little Tongan proverb. If you can cook and at the same time catch or trap things, that means you can multitask. And so he uses that proverb that if you're a Polynesian, live in America, learn as much as you can regarding the language, culture, but learn also uh, the American culture or wherever you live. It makes you a stronger person, and your identity hopefully will be stronger because you're taking the good out of both.
Mm.
I don't think you have to speak the language. I think it helps, but I think if you can just learn some of the things and put them together, you can become a more well-rounded person.
Yeah, I think. Oh, Shaimi said this happened with me as being a Sri Lankan and born in Australia. It was so tough in my community because I didn't know the language or customs. I would say the best thing I did was research the code and practice the parts that make you proud to be both identities. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I was gonna say, and I mean, Lay and Lonnie are in here, but I feel like growing up in our household, I never felt like. I mean, you guys didn't really teach us Tongan or Samoan because my mom is Samoan and my dad's Tongan, so we had both. But I do think that we knew enough that as far as the customs and stuff like that, that when we went out to family gatherings and stuff, we wouldn't embarrass ourselves or anything.
Yeah, I think, we went to church and it was a Tongan church, but it was all in English, right?
Yeah,
But you were around your culture or the Tongan Samoan community.
yeah,
And I think just by experiencing it, your identity was being formed, so to speak, right?
yeah,
But I think if you come with an approach that I'm not full Tongan or I'm not, whatever. I think if you can be able to mix both together, take the good and learn the bad, learn the things that you probably wouldn't do, but take the good and then put it together. I think you can be a more well-rounded person with different things, and then that's your identity.
Yeah.
That's your identity.
I also think you need to be the change that you want to see. I remember, this is really embarrassing to admit, but I remember when I lived in this place called Logan. I was there, and there was a Polynesian, there was a Tongan kid that was adopted by a Balangi family or a white family. And I remember when I first moved there, and I met him one time, and I was like, dude, this guy is just so annoying. He doesn't know, all the customs. He doesn't know all these kind of things, and I used to just flame him. And the longer that I stayed down there, and the longer that I felt bad, especially now, where you know I'm like making fun of this guy who doesn't know all the customs and stuff like that, and that's not the change that I want to see in myself, if that makes sense. Like, that just makes it harder for him because he didn't grow up with where I was blessed enough to be around a lot of, like I said, like at church, even at school. Most of my friends were Polynesian as well, Tongan and Samoan, and so I think you really need to make sure that, and that's like my generation and the generation under us too, or above me, is that we need to make sure that we're being the change we want to see in the community as well, and not being like, oh, this guy's not Polynesian, this guy's not Tongan enough, this guy's not. We also need to make sure we're not shaming others who are trying to learn their cultures. We should applaud people for trying. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
And there was never a time that uh, me and Karma, Ammon's mom, I don't believe we ever sat down and just said, this is the culture, this. I think we maybe mentioned it, but I think you experienced it, right?
Yeah,
You experienced the culture just by how we lived it. Because me and Karma, my wife, we I think we take both and use it. There's a little saying. I have these little sayings all the time. My kids have heard this all the time.
all the
The
time.
best way to the best way to learn something is it goes something like it's better that it's caught than being taught. So what I mean by that is it's better to catch or catch the experience of learning than actually teaching it.
Yeah,
So you caught the culture just by how we lived and how we probably put you in an environment where there was Polynesians around you all the time, or you went to school or church. So you caught it rather
yeah,
than being taught it.
yeah. Like a good
Does that make sense?
example. A good example is like, I'm the oldest cousin, right? But I remember, and my sisters know too. My brother, they know, like, when you're walking past elders, you need to, you know, glow and say excuse me, all that kind of stuff. And that's the stuff that you learn when you're with family and things like that. Oh, Lonnie, what did Lonnie say? Yeah, I got called a coconut a lot. Brown on the inside, brown on the outside, white on the inside, because I couldn't speak the languages. You got to find where you want to fit in the world, and not just what people tell you. Once you find that confidence, you make your own place. Yep, my parents were big on not just telling us, they showed us. Yeah. I've been there, being the guy who has mocked people not knowing their culture enough, and I realized that it was just because I didn't feel good enough, and I was just projecting those feelings on others, make myself feel better. Yeah. Everyone thought I was Mexican, but I never hung out with the poly on the church. People thought that's Jerem, Dad. Jerem was Filipino.
Yes, that's why he went to the Philippines.
Okay. The next question is, what are other ways instead of talking to someone that can help you if you are unable to talk to people?
What are other ways instead of talking to someone can help?
I think you kind of answered this with like the books, right? The books and
Yeah, yeah, you can read. There's so many resources out there, guys, to help. Um, to help ourselves. Like I said, after you've done a lot of those things, once again, you know, I think the main thing is just do some research with resources online. There's books, there's videos everywhere. You can kind of just learn some things, try it. They you want to, if you're looking for therapy, I would pull up, maybe that the word that they use is what they call evidence-based interventions or practices to overcome clinical depression. I say the word evidence-based, things that have been proven
Yeah.
to work. Um, and so I would look for those things. I mean, and some of those basic things of helping overcome depression would be exercise, diet, all these different exercise, whatever it is, meditation, eating better, um, just all these little basic things that we should do just if it can help. So I would say do some of those things first. But one thing I want to make sure, guys, is this. I would say always talk to someone. The more you don't talk to someone and isolate yourself, I think really for us, we're made to connect to people. I think, to be honest with you guys, I think this world, eh, the way it's kind of set up, where there's a lot of streaming video games and all that, sometimes that can put us where we're alone a lot, right? I don't know if that's the case. That's just me looking from the outside in. But as I mentioned in the last podcast, I've been studying this epidemic about loneliness, and it is huge. And I just keep reading about it because loneliness really a lot of it leads to a lot of depression, um, addictions, anxiety, all that. The more you connect, the more, and what I mean is connect to a friend or a family member or someone, or whatever it is, make connections. I said this last time that in addiction, the quote goes like this: the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection.
Yeah.
So the more you connect with people, it's an intervention of how to help you. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Journaling is good.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Art comes from undergoing therapy multiple times. Lay said, Brown said, depression thrives in secrecy and shrinks in empathy.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the antidote of of sometimes a lot of things is just making good connection with people. Always try to connect with people.
Gotta find a good balance. Stream one night, mix the other night. This guy. At least you're connecting, huh? Okay, the next question is, what can a family member or friend do to support those they know who are dealing with addiction?
Yeah, the worst thing to do is to judge them. I think, to kind of just get on their case. What happens, guys, is if you're a family member and you just continue just to rip on them and so on, it just makes that person feel more maybe shame or even angry. And then what happens is the way they may want to numb that feeling or give some relief from that pain is maybe doing something like something that may cause an addiction, or drink or smoke or do something that may self-harm themselves.
Yeah.
So I would say the best thing is to just support them, help them. I mean, not support them to keep using, obviously. No, just support them. How can we help you? And just really try to understand the root cause of what's going on. If you guys ever have a chance, um, there's a video uh, by Dr. Alexander. It's called The Rat Park, and it talks about how they did studies regarding rats and addiction. And the world right now, if someone uses substance abuse and they're drug addicts and all that, The treatment for years is just to lock them up and isolate them. But what they did was they did a bunch of studies. They did a bunch of studies, and this was back in the 1950s, and even now, they put rats in these cages, and they had morphine and water. And when you're alone, the rats would choose the morphine, and they would get really drug addicted to the drug morphine. But then they took these same rats, put them in what they call a rat park. It was an experiment, and it was with other rats. And they had a lot of different little toys there and so on. And they still had the morphine and the water. They chose the water more. It's because there was social connection with all the different rats,
Mm.
right? There was things to do all continuously. And they always talk about this experiment, and it's called Rat Park, that the more you have connections, the more chances you have to not go back into a behavior that you don't want to do, that's unwanted. So once again, the world right now, in many cases, if somebody has problems with drugs or whatever, we isolate them, put them in a cage, and lock them up. But really, the biggest thing is we need to help them make connections. So going to that question once again is the main thing here is to support them. Don't shame them. Don't lock them up. Whatever it is you might do that will just help them. That'll make them just feel more bad. You want to just support them and just say, "How do we help you? Love them," and so on.
I wanted to ask this as a follow up question. Dad, what do you think when you are supporting them as much as you can, and for whatever reason, it's just the behavior will not change as a family member or friend?
The behavior will never. You say it just doesn't
It just
change.
they just won't change, no matter how much you support them. Is it like, is there like a certain point where you just stop supporting them, or you just continue in hopes that they will change?
Well, if they don't want to change, you still have to try to get to the root of why they don't want to change. The the drug, the the usage or whatever is really secondary.
Yeah, yeah,
You've got to figure out why is it that they use the drug or the substance or the behavior to numb that feeling. So you've got to get even deeper and figure out what is it that they are struggling with. Is it that they just don't feel heard? They don't feel like they belong and all those kind of things. So you got to go deeper, even deeper. I I don't think anybody wants to be a drug addict, right? It's just more of a numbing. No, no, it's just a numbing feeling. That's a pain reliever. So you just got to go more deeper and just dig a little deeper. It just takes more patience, and you got to just figure out, okay, this is what's happening, and dig deeper until you find what the root, and then try to figure out and intervene with what the root cause is of. I don't believe anybody wants to stay being a drug addict or whatever, so on. No, I don't believe anybody wants to do that.
right.
I think I'm just more positive that anybody can change if you just kind of keep going at it.
Yeah,
You just keep going at it and keep trying and keep trying. I just believe that you can help someone change. It
yeah,
might take an hour, it might take a year, or it might take 10 years
or 20,
or 20.
50 years. Yeah. Okay, some of these questions you've already answered, so I'm gonna try to find. Here's one. How can we create a safe space for our kids to come talk to us? You gotta answer that one. I'm interested what you could answer that one.
What's that?
How can we create a safe space for our kids to come talk to us?
How can we create a safe space as a parent
Yeah, I think it's. I
or
think they're
vice
saying
versa?
as a parent.
Um, I think the main thing is just being just trying to, to be open. Sometimes, sometimes as a parent, if you try to push the person to try to talk to you, it's, I just don't think it works, if that makes any sense. I think everybody is ready when they want to be ready to talk. I'm going to use a Christian principle here. Okay, you guys may not agree with me, but I believe Heavenly Father wants to help all his children. But does Heavenly Father come to us, or do we have to go to him first? Any thought? You know, I think if you're able, if you go to him, because he always wants to help you, then that means you're ready to change.
Yeah.
You're ready to change. I believe as a father, and like Heavenly Father, he wants to help us every single minute. But I just believe that's how the our Heavenly Father operates, is that we try to go, and when we try to get some help, then we will talk. Sorry, when we want help, we'll talk to the person that wants the help first. Now, at the same time, the Father has to be open and so on. I just believe I'll just speak for myself. I just think if I try to force you guys to talk to me all the time, I just think it won't work because you're not ready.
Yeah.
But I just believe try to be open and just wait for them to come talk, because that shows that your stage of wanting to change is is now. You're more motivated when you're trying to ask for help.
Right. Right.
But I think as a person, a parent, whatever, you have to stay open and hopefully continue to be able to talk to them when they're ready to talk to you.
V said, I see parents try to become homies with their teenage kids and end up regretting finding out the stuff their children are up to, since their kids assume their parents are cool with everything. Lonnie said, I would say it depends on the child. All four of us had different ways of communicating with y'all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my parents were very physical in their communication.
Laying on of hands.
The laying on of hands. Okay. We'll do two. We'll do two more, and then we'll see if anybody else has questions. How do you find balance when you're overwhelmed?
How do you find balance when you're overwhelmed?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, where are you? I'm just gonna.
Wait, ask the follow-up question. Oh, hold on.
Oh,
Wait, Wait, which one, Lay? Do the follow-up question. Wait, which one? Oh, Hezron's question. Oh, follow-up question here, Dad. How do we as a younger generation approach the topic of addiction with an elder while keeping fa'alalo, like respect? Ooh, that's a good question.
so the question is, how do we address someone who's older?
No, how do we as a younger generation approach the topic of addiction with an elder? Hez, are you talking about like we're like, hey, I have an addiction with this? Or you're saying like, hey, Dad, you have an addiction to this? I think you're talking about us.
Us with the parents, or you guys?
Well, I'm asking, just to
Oh,
clarify. I think as the elder having an addiction. Ah.
Okay, did I just do something wrong there?
Because
Maybe I'm
that,
not understanding the question. Think
yeah, I think he means bring it up to an elder.
talking to an older person.
Like me talking to a parent or uncle kind of vibes. Yeah, they said answer both. So I guess it's like, how do we approach the topic of addiction when you want to talk to an uncle or aunt? Yeah, how to address talking to your elder about their addiction and when to bring addiction as a younger person.
Yeah, that's a good question, especially if let's just say you're Pacific Islander. Sometimes uh, laying on of hands might come off after that. Like they might say you're fiat poto, right? Um, I think once again, just being able to sense, um, just being able to sense that uh, this is a time to you got to talk to them somehow. You've got to talk to them in a way that is not, um, that's going to offend them. You might say something and you might offend them anyways because maybe they're still defensive and so on. I know. I'll give you an example here. They have this therapeutic model. It's called the Five Stages of Change, and it's by a professor years ago, um, by the name of Dr. Prochaska. But anyways, and this is something that's used even till now, and this was done way back like 30, 40, 50 years ago, around there, about 40 years ago. But the stage of change, what that means is there's different stages of where people are when they're about to change. Okay, so let's say, for example, um, there's someone who who has a drinking problem, but they really don't want to change yet. They know it's bad, but they don't want to change. So there's a stage for that, and it's called contemplation. They know they should do this, but they don't. But there's an intervention that's best for when a person is at a certain stage. So if someone knows they have a problem, but they don't want to change yet, the best type of intervention is what they call emotional arousal. And that's when you show things in that therapeutic intervention or meeting that emotionally arouses them. So let's say, for example, if they drink, you might watch a movie that shows something about um, drinking and what it does to someone, or
Hmm.
they may change because maybe a uncle died because they were drinking and crashed.
Yeah.
It raises it emotionally raises their consciousness, and that's the best type of intervention when someone is at that stage. So if you have this uncle that you want to address and you know what stage of change they're at, that's what I try to do in counseling, is figure out what stage are you at. Are you still in denial? Are you at that contemplation stage? There's these different stages. What you do is you put in the right intervention that will help them hopefully make a step to making a change. If they're a drinker but they don't want to change yet, you educate them with emotional arousal techniques. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah. Like
Because
showing them what can
yeah,
happen.
yeah, or they may experience somebody dying and it was because of alcohol and it was a close relative. That
Yeah.
will emotionally arouse them, and it's the best. You oftentimes counselors and treatment programs put the wrong intervention to where the person is in their stage of change.
Yeah.
If they're still in denial, you've got to really educate them on something because they're not going to change it. They just think they don't have a problem. There's a specific intervention for that stage. So you just got to figure that out. But if you have an uncle that you want to address, and you know they may be a little defensive, or you may know, or if they're really defensive, don't think they're having, then you know they're denial, and you figure out what the interventions. There's books that talk about interventions for what stage each person's at. I would address it that way, figure out where they're at, because you may offend them and they might get mad at you.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out where they're at and put in the right intervention.
I think we had. Do you have an example of how to create the emotional arousal for those with gambling addictions?
Yeah. You can somehow figure out maybe somebody losing a house, losing their car, or or whatever it is that may emotionally arouse that really affects from losing a lot of money because of the gambling. You got to maybe when they're at that stage, movies and videos are the best things for that stage if it's a gambling addiction.
Hmm.
So you got to find something that shows really a something that will really move them if they keep doing that behavior. I don't know anything specific. Is it Big Hez
Mm-hmm.
685? But find something that maybe, like I said, when I'm working with someone, I'll try to find short videos or watch a movie and show just that specific section or part of that movie. The movies are great. Or an experience. Gosh, if somebody dies or a gambling or something happens because of a gambling addiction and they know them,
Yeah.
that's even a better intervention.
I think we had. I think we had another question. I think Mari asked a question. Do you believe that every child grows up with different parents?
What do you mean different parents?
You could ignore mine. It's okay. I think she was just saying that basically, I think every kid gets a different experience with their parent. I think
Oh
they
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they do. I definitely had a different experience than all my siblings.
Yeah. You guys all know that it's different. We made a lot of mistakes, still make mistakes, but
Yeah,
yeah,
there was just
I think
less.
you
There was
do.
just less mistakes after me. I think perspective is important in that question. What's up, Chungus? Welcome in. Okay, let's do two more. Um. Oh wait, no. Wait, did you ask the? Okay, here's one. I'm an individual who does not trust anyone. Is it fair to have that judgment even though I do love those around me? Can I love people even though I don't trust people? Ooh, interesting question.
Yeah, that's I'm trying to figure how can you love and not trust people? You know what I mean? It's uh it's kind of a tricky question, like whatever that person says. And I don't know if the trust is because of an experience maybe that you've had, or I don't know, you had, or maybe it's just a generic question, but I don't know if maybe the lack of trust of people is because of maybe an experience. Um, I think you've trust and love has to kind of go together. You to really love someone, you've got to trust them. So you probably just have to figure out, why do I not trust? Um, and maybe is it an experience that happened? Um, and maybe gain some insight and figure out, why do I feel that way? I really believe you have to have both to really love someone.
Yeah.
To Because how do you love someone and you don't trust them? I don't know. That's kind of a tricky question.
Well, I mean, you could think of it. You could think of it as like you love, like V was talking about earlier, that someone in his family he steals from him, right? Like I can love Jerem, but if Jerem steals, you know, my money and stuff, like I don't trust him in my room with stealing
Mm,
stuff. So, I mean, if that would make sense. Like you love them, but you don't trust them that way. But
yeah. Let me just see where you got it. I get the trust. Yeah. I think it's just, yeah, I mean, that's a good example. I mean, but I think one day I think you have to put together both
right,
to be able to um, love them and trust them. Yeah, it's kind of a tricky question, but I think you have to have both.
conditional love. Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, like it says there, that's long lasting and everything. Um, yeah, I sorry, I don't know if I have the right answer for that, but the best that I can do.
Okay, so is there any other questions? There was a couple that were on there, but I think my dad. I think don't let other people who have broken your trust keep you from trusting those who earn it. Yeah, that's a good one, Lonnie. Any other questions before my for my dad before we kind of wrap up here? Who's better at golf? Oh my goodness.
Between who?
Between me and you.
That's a simple answer.
It's a simple answer now. I don't play. Whoa,
Of
whoa, whoa.
course. How do you get better at something? You got to play.
Wait, I don't suck.
You got to
I
practice.
just gotta practice.
Um, Anything else?
For sure. You guys are haters, bro. How often will you have these streams for mental health? I don't know. My dad, you guys are, these guys are flaming me right now. I don't know, Mari. It really just depends on my dad. I really want to have some other. We were gonna try to have my uncle, who's a he's a psychiatrist, right?
Yeah, he's a psychiatrist.
Yeah. Um, and so what I want to do, and maybe this might be a series, but um, one of my goals last year was to make like a podcast or like a to talk about Polynesian excellence and also men's mental health. And so I might have some other people come on. Obviously, I have my dad again. Really just depends on people's schedules. Everybody's pretty busy. But I would think we'll try to have these as often as possible. Have some, you know, new insight and stuff like that. But
And and Ammon, I'm okay to maybe come on. I feel where I feel like that I have good solid knowledge is the addiction part, right? The addiction, especially if you know anyone that struggles with pornography or like these kind of sexual addictions, um, and if you're willing to use Christian principles with it, I can help on that. I feel like
yeah,
that's where my strength is. I feel like I've helped a lot of people make changes. So if anybody wants any help or you know of anybody needs that help, um, I feel that that's something I can help out with quite a bit and even come on often
yeah,
to maybe talk about a specific tool or technique. I can do that as much as you want, but I think it with pornography addiction, And you can use these addiction principles to overcome any other addiction. It's more of a self-mastery class.
Yeah.
So, um, so if that's something anybody wants to learn, let me know.
Yeah. And then you guys, yeah, if you guys want, definitely, definitely message me because my dad could do it over Zoom, where you guys can join his classes, and those are psychoeducation for the addiction recovery, but they're specifically for sexual addiction, right, and pornography.
Yeah.
So
And Ammon mentioned psychoeducational groups. When you let me just kind of explain this real quick. If you do a Zoom group and someone else is in another state, you can't do therapy online if someone is in another state and you don't have a license in that state,
yeah,
right? So I can do counseling, and plus, if you're doing groups, you're not going to go deep.
yeah,
You're not going to go deep into their childhood, if they were abused and all those things in group therapy. And you don't want, I just think it's more psychoeducational, you're teaching skills and so
yeah,
on. But but that's why I think Ammon mentioned psychoeducational, because if you're in another state, it's against the law to do groups, and you're not licensed to do group therapy. It's you have to have a license in every single state
yeah,
that they live in. So if you're doing psychoeducational and not go into deeper stuff, then it's okay.
yeah. Everybody's saying thanks for the wisdom. Okay, last thing. Is there any last words of advice? Anything you want to leave with the chat before we wrap it up? If they were to learn anything from this stream, what would it be? We're done.
For me,
Yeah.
um, once again, if you're struggling with mental health, sometimes we may just get out of balance, because of a lot of stress and so on. I would say, once again, there's a lot of resources. There's books, there's friends, there's families, support leaders, there's things online that you can really just get some help and just kind of practice it. It's just when you, like I said, when you when you can't function and you're sleeping 15 hours a day or whatever it is, or whatever, if you're sleeping a lot and you don't even want to go to work and all that, then I would probably see a doctor or a counselor. But if it's just I think everybody, I remember that um, having some kind of depression is like a common cold. Everybody gets it sometime in their life,
Hmm.
especially like the cold right now. You got seasonal affective disorder, where
Yeah.
it's just because of
The
the
cold.
season, the
Yeah.
cold, no sun around. You could feel depressed now. But I think what they've said that many times, that everybody goes through some type of depression. It's like a common cold. You'll catch it sometime.
Yeah.
But when it's become severe and you can't get up, you can't do all these different things, you have no appetite, you've lost interests in, I don't know, playing golf, then something's going on with your life,
Yeah.
that you have to kind of see a doctor. So I would say, guys, I'm saying this as a counselor, don't go spend $100 on a counselor. Not unless it's severe. I would say try to do the work yourself with family. There's a lot of resources out there. If it gets worse, then maybe see someone.
Sweet. Thanks, Dad. Again, appreciate you. Um, I think a lot of good things were said today. If you guys have any more questions or anything, you guys can just message. We have in the Discord the mental health channel. So if you guys have like questions and stuff like that, definitely you guys can ask it in that channel. And then obviously I can